All right, we're getting live pictures of the Prime Minister arriving at this venue, the Bharat Mandapam, just outside Exhibition Hall 14, where he will be hosting the 20 most powerful men and women on the planet, the leaders of the G20 grouping of countries. We can see the Prime Minister's limousine just stretch in to the Bharat Mandapam venue. And of course, he will be standing there at the entrance of hall number 14 and welcoming each of the guests personally and asking them to come in and join him. You can see the Prime Minister there. He's, of course, flanked by the other delegates from the Indian team. Of course, he is interacting with them, checking on last-minute preparations and last-minute details that need to be sorted out. So clearly, the Prime Minister there will be now taking his position outside this Exhibition Hall 14 at the Bharat Mandapam, from where he will be greeting all the dignitaries who will be coming. We know that the leaders of the United States, the UK, are already here. The German Chancellor has just arrived. The French President will be arriving later this afternoon. So clearly, all countries are being represented. All 19 countries plus the European Union are being represented. Maybe not all of them at the head of state or head of government level. For example, Russia is being represented by its foreign minister. The Chinese are being represented by Li Qiang, who is the premier, not the president of China. So, but the important thing is that all members, all member states of the G20 and international organizations that are part of the G20, like the EU and other institutions, are all being represented by their leaders. So the Prime Minister's car, as you saw moments ago, just driving in to this Bharat Mandapam, the venue. Like I said, the Prime Minister will be personally and individually greeting each of the leaders. They will then proceed to the main hall. At about 10 o'clock is when the first session that will begin, which is One Earth. The Prime Minister, of course, being the host this year, will be making the opening comments. We're given to understand that's going to be closer to 10:30. And then each of the leaders of these various 20 countries will give their opening statements. That part is open to the media. And after that, the doors will be shut and there will be deliberations on the theme of One Earth. That's where the bulk of the deliberations will be going on. Let me go across to my colleague Anand Narasimhan, who's also joining us from this International Media Center just inside the Bharat Mandapam complex. So Anand, the Prime Minister and his cavalcade just pulling in. How important and how significant is it that he is personally greeting each of the visiting leaders and ushering them in to the main exhibition hall?
Well, that itself shows our commitment to Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, and this is all one family. And of course, the civilizational, cultural practice where you treat your Atithi as a Deva or a Devata, as nothing short of God. So, Atithi Devo Bhava. And that's why the host, that is India, and the Prime Minister, who's a Pradhan Sevak, representing a nation of 1.4 billion people and welcoming the leadership delegation. I'm on the upper deck, so that's Hall 14. Right below that, at the tent, that's where Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be. In fact, just a stone's throw away from us here, from this height, is where his car, his cavalcade has actually parked itself. You have the SPG and all of that at the ready down below here. But that is Prime Minister Narendra Modi inside, along with Subramaniam Jaishankar. You will also have Minister Piyush Goyal present there. So these are the people who are going to be helming, along with the Chief Coordinator and also Sherpa Amitabh Kant. So Chief Coordinator Harshvardhan Shringla and Sherpa Amitabh Kant. This will be the core who will be leading it, along with Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman. Some of the important conversations. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman did have in-depth engagements with her counterparts last evening, even as the bilaterals were going on at the PMO, that is 7 Lok Kalyan Marg, between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Prime Minister Praveen Jugnauth, and after that with Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina of Bangladesh, and thereafter with President Joe Biden. I think the most significant, Zaka, like we said, and we are seeing it all around, is hospitality, comfort, care. This aspect of we care for you, you matter to us, and we will all collectively work together. This ethos is there at every nook and corner of the Bharat Mandapam and the G20 arrangements to facilitate the movement of all the leaders. There is inconvenience to us as hosts, as locals, as residents of Delhi, but we are willing to bear that inconvenience so that you have a pleasurable experience because you are our guests. I think that is the overall sentiment and ethos that that we are seeing communicated across the board. And the Prime Minister is leading from the front. He's been in the thick of all the arrangements and, more importantly, standing right there to ensure that each and every dignitary, as they start arriving, is welcomed. And he's there on time. 9:30 onwards is when the session is supposed to begin, and all the guests should start arriving now. And he's there right on time. And if he's on time, that means everybody else has to be on time within the entire apparatus, Zaka. So that's something which he's been leading from the front for nearly a decade, and we've seen him at close quarters function like this. You can actually wind your clock based on his arrival.
Yeah, certainly he's on time. 9:15 is when we're told the first sets of guests will arrive, and like I said, the Prime Minister is at the south entrance where he will be welcoming each of these guests. Certainly the leaders, either at the head of state or at the head of government level. My colleague Siddhant is also there here at the International Media Centre. Arunima is joining us from a vantage point in Lutyens, Delhi, from where all of these leaders will be leaving from their respective hotels. Pallavi Ghosh is also there here at the International Media Centre. Siddhant, first things first. So coming into today, the important day, day one of this G20 summit, what can we expect? What is the schedule for today? There are 3 sessions that I'm given to understand. First is the morning session where they will discuss One Earth, and then in the afternoon there is the One Family session, and then in the evening they have the cultural extravaganza and the dinner that's going to be hosted by the Rashtrapati. So walk us through what is expected through the day today.
Ground floor of International Media Center, and behind me you can see journalists are perhaps getting ready for the first session, to cover the first session. So first I would like to explain it for our viewers that how these multilateral events are covered. So look at these screens. So these screens are going to broadcast the arrival of the leaders, the greeting exchange between Prime Minister Modi and other leaders, and at the same time post that when this session will begin. So the first session, Zaka, is going to be the open session. Open session means that Prime Minister's remark will be broadcasted by the state broadcaster. Now, the second session is the closed door session. So One Earth session is an open session. One Family session is a closed door session. The other leaders' remark and statements will be broadcasted by late night by their state broadcasters. So that is how the protocol is for G20. Now this is quite different from what has been what was followed in BRICS. So in BRICS there is an open session in which a state broadcaster of the host country broadcast the remark of all the leaders. So there is it depends on multilateral event to multilateral event. But when it comes to G20, this protocol is followed. Now, Zaka, we were talking about the consensus building. Now, it all depends on Prime Minister's charisma and his might, and perhaps his personal equation with the word leaders. In fact, Anand was also talking about Jake Sullivan's statement where he said that there could be a situation of compromise. So, but having said that, Zaka, the kind of statements coming from the senior officials, the NSL ranking officials from the European countries, talking about Ukraine and what Russia has been mentioning from day one, that West wants this G20 presidency to be Ukrainized. That was the word which was used by Russia. Also, this we were talking about the Sherpa track. Right. Now, talking about the finance track, Zaka, you are well aware that there are 2 objections which have been raised by China and Russia. So that is something where consensus needs to be built. So, it's going to be, when we say that India is walking a tightrope, then perhaps next 24 hours are very crucial to decide the fate of India's presidency, because Zaka, going by the standards, the success of any multilateral event is considered when joint declaration comes out. But irrespective of that, Zaka, the kind of development-driven, growth-oriented and human-centric growth-oriented model agenda that India has put forth is remarkable, and perhaps would help in the development of the countries from the global south.
All right, Pallavi and Abhishek are also joining us from the International Media Center here, but I want to go across to Arunima, who's joining us from a vantage point in central Delhi, where from all of these leaders, the visiting leaders, whether it's of the UK, of Germany, of other visiting countries, part of the G20, are all going to be leaving in the next few minutes from their respective hotels. So Arunima, just walk us through what you're seeing around you. What is the security protocol that's been put in place? I believe, they've swooped down on the entire Lutyens zone, as it were, and there is no passage of any other private vehicles for at least the next 45 minutes or so.
Yes, 9 o'clock is when the first set of carcades have begun moving as per the details that have been made available. There are carcades moving in from Gurgaon. There are carcades moving in from the Aero City. There are also carcades moving in from Saket in South Delhi. So these are further away from Bharat Mandapam. But in central Delhi area, you can see multiple layers of barricades being put up. This is the road that takes you towards India Gate. The hotels around this area, the Claridges, which hosts France, the Lodi Hotel, which hosts Oman. The Russian delegation is at the Oberoi, which is also near this area. And the few vehicles and the few riders who are being allowed, their iCards are being checked. These are people mostly who are doctors. At least 3 doctors were allowed. They were working at Ram Manohar Lohia. And there is a support team vehicle right behind us, if PK Das could show you. So doctors and support team vehicles are the only ones who are being allowed. Other than that, you see multiple vehicles being stopped, riders being stopped, their iCards being checked. They're all being frisked as to why they're on this route, and only this particular route, after frisking, after checking of the iCards, is being allowed. Every other route has been sanitized leading up to the India Gate area, leading up to Bharat Mandapam, and this will continue till about 10:30, and then there could be some break, and then again 4 o'clock onwards, when the return, some delegates want to go back and then come back for presidential dinner in the evening. So there has been a proper schedule worked out. Specifically trained drivers have been also told which hospital to go to if any of the delegation members or the heads of the state there's a medical emergency. There are also lanes and by-lanes that have been marked in case there is an exigency, what route the driver should take. And these are specifically trained drivers, about 450 of them, who have earlier worked with the SPG or the NSG. So the Delhi police has completed its bandobast, and it is ensuring that towards Bharat Mandapam, where our delegates are going, where our heads of states are going, there is no difficulty that they face there. Even if Delhiites are being told to cooperate, there is some restricted movement for Delhiites there.
Okay, I also want to go across to Pallavi Ghosh and Abhishek Jha. Pallavi, you cover the finance ministry. Even at the first meeting that happened, the first big meeting of the G20, which was the finance ministers' meeting in Bengaluru, a consensus was elusive, and that was followed by the foreign ministers' meeting again, where they couldn't find a common language to come out with a joint communique. When you speak to members in the finance ministry and others in government, how hopeful are they of getting this joint communique? And B, even if that weren't to come to pass, things like digital public infrastructure, the UPI payment architecture, all of these are things that India has given huge emphasis on. A whole bunch of countries have already shared this with India on a bilateral basis. How hopeful are officials that even if there isn't a common text or a joint declaration or a joint communique, some of these other outcomes, whether it comes to digital public infrastructure, financial infrastructure, etc., economic fugitives who are running away from crimes that they've done, all of these agreements, how significant are officials seeing those as? All right, Pallavi, we'll try and come back to you in just a second. We'll try and patch her audio in just a second. But Abhishek is there. Abhishek, you cover the External Affairs Ministry. I'm sure the diplomats there, the members of the MEA, the Sherpas team, they're all sort of burning the midnight oil, even as the leaders arrive here. And we've seen visuals of Prime Minister Modi's cavalcade and him arriving into this main exhibition hall at the Bharat Mandapam. What are the other officials doing at this point of time? And just walk our viewers through what a race against time this is to try and, try to come to a consensus on the language of the text that can be used, which is acceptable to all parties, particularly to Russia and to China.
Of course, Zaka, this is a mega gathering where the world leaders have come to discuss about the global issues of importance, the issues ranging from finances, debt restructuring, climate financing, climate change, issues of geopolitics. But then there are certain aspects, as you have mentioned rightly, that remains bone of contention. At least there are three regions to say where the consensus is still not emerged. One is, of course, geopolitical situation that would require Russia-Ukraine conflict to be mentioned, and there is a sense that if the Western grouping wants to have Russia condemned, they can put in their perspective, and the Russians can also put in their perspective, and probably that would emerge as a statement in the geopolitical segment. But that is still not finalized. This is just being talked about whether this could be a possibility. The second bone of contention has been the debt restructuring, especially China, which has given a massive amount of loan to smaller countries, and now these countries are not in a position to repay China back, and that is creating a lot of economic crisis, political turmoil, and also some strategic leverage that China can use for its own benefit while disturbing the overall global rules-based order. This is what the world has been thinking, and they want this restructuring, debt restructuring agenda to be mentioned where China has clearly in a position. Then there is another aspect of climate change and climate financing, where the Gulf countries are not very keen because it will require a lot of phasing out of coal-based power plants, fossil fuel reduction of dependency on the fossil fuels, and how the world's other countries who are pretty much dependent on these fossil fuel for their own economic purposes, they will deal with it. Just now, United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres was in Delhi, and he was giving a press conference and said that world is needing about $4 trillion per year if it wants an energy transition at a rapid speed that can curb the overall global warming scenario, and if we want to save our climate. So for that, climate financing, sharing of technology, these are the issues that the world leaders are trying to negotiate with and come to a consensus. We'll have to see. There are still 24 hours at least by the time this whole event will be wrapping up, and the leaders will be having final phase of negotiations. Will there be a joint communique? That remains a challenge, because in the last 20 years, despite several geopolitical tensions, there has not been a scenario where the joint communique of G20 did not come out. Even during Bali summit, there was possibility, there was a lot of rumor that the joint communique is not being arrived upon because of the differences in West and Russia. But finally, it did happen. So how challenging it is for Indian presidency is quite palpable here because of the round-the-clock negotiation that is going on. But at the end of the day, will India be coming out with a joint communique? That remains to be seen.
All right. Even in Bali, India played a role as a bridge, as some kind of a helper to Indonesia to try and ferret out a draft that is acceptable to both Russia and China. Of course, that was in the first 6 months or so of the war. The war began in February. Bali was in November. So it was within the first year of the war. Now it's been a year and a half. So how much harder would it be to ferret out a joint communique, the language that is acceptable to all? But let me also go across to Pallavi Ghosh, my colleague, because the first time... All right, we're just getting the first pictures. I believe we have live pictures from the airport. All right, I'm not sure which leader has arrived. I'm going to try and ask my PCR to cue me once. All right, the Saudi Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman, has just arrived at the Palam Technical Area, the airport where all the leaders are arriving. Remember, MBS's visit is very significant because he's here not just for the G20. He will stay on in Delhi on the 11th, the day after the G20, when he will be accorded a state visit. And that, of course, for anyone who's been following diplomacy knows that that's the highest form of diplomatic visit that any country offers. In fact, Prime Minister Modi was offered the state visit back in June in the United States. So India is offering a state visit to the Saudi Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman. You can see the pictures of him arriving at the airport. And that small dance performance that is greeting the Saudi delegation. He is gone straight into his car, and the car will now drive. I'm not sure whether he will go to the hotel and then come to the venue here, the Bharat Mandapam, or whether he will come straight to the Bharat Mandapam. Of course, it's also important to remember that there is some speculation that he might even go to Pakistan on his route back from India back to Saudi Arabia, because there is some conversations between the Saudi establishment and the Pakistani military, which he wants to wrap up at the highest level. But these are the pictures of Mohammed bin Salman as he arrives at the Palam Technical Area, the airport. Let me go across to Pallavi Ghosh, my colleague, and I was asking you about, even if a joint communique were not to come, how hopeful are Finance Ministry officials about some of the outcomes, whether it comes to digital financial architecture, whether it comes to regulating cryptocurrencies? India is a big advocate of having some kind of a global regulation of cryptocurrencies, and even this economic fugitives who have run away from their respective home countries where they're accused of financial misdemeanors. How hopeful are Finance Ministry officials that some of these outcomes might mitigate or compensate for the lack of a joint communique?
Very gung-ho and very, very enthusiastic. And in fact, Zaka, they are quite happy about the fact that much of the demands which they wanted it to be put on the agenda, they have managed to put on the agenda. But before I just go across to those couple of points, first quick nugget of information as far as the Saudi Arabia delegation is concerned. They've actually been a little troubling ones as far as getting a common agenda or joint declaration is concerned. See, India, and especially because the Prime Minister is very close to his heart, he wanted a just climate resolution, just as in being fair. But because of the Saudi pressure and because India wants to reach out and it believes that the larger good is more important and let's not have needless egos about it, the word climate was dropped and just resolution was adopted. And the reason behind it is because the entire purpose behind it is giving a huge push to biofuel. In fact, at 5 p.m. today, it's almost official now, there's going to be a global biofuel alliance, again something which is very close both to the Finance Ministry as well as to the Prime Minister. This is for a better eco-green world, and second is to kind of cater to the hungry energy needs of the world, and therefore an alternative has been found. Saudi Arabia, China, Russia did have concerns about this because much of the economy depends on fossil fuel. That's also one of the reasons why the word climate was dropped, so as to placate Saudi Arabia. So that's the length which Indian government is ready to go. You're talking to me about, asking me about the Finance Ministry expectations. They're very happy with two main things. One, of course, finally cryptocurrency has been put and accepted on the agenda. Why is it important? Because India does have reservations about cryptocurrency. If you remember, at the B20 summit, the Prime Minister had said it's inevitable. It's a dark world, but we all need to regulate and monitor it. As of now, India has put a 33% tax on it. It cannot be seen as a legal tender. It cannot be seen as a banking note. So India thinks that there should be a regulation on it. And it's not something only in isolation. Because it belongs to the wide world of the net, therefore there has to be a coordination and a joint regulatory mechanism. That has been put on the agenda, and they are very hopeful that in the joint declaration, this is one point which may come across. Second is, of course, economic offenders. We know it also becomes a political issue back home over here in India. And just to give you, by way of sources, a quote which came in from Finance Ministry is that sometimes they are not even given access to the list of economic offenders who may be having Swiss bank accounts. We only come to know about it in case there is a kind of a legal case which comes up. And in fact, if there is more cooperation as far as the economic offenders are concerned, if there's a structured mechanism, it becomes easier for us, one, to tap those offenders, and second, to ensure that we can bring them back to a country. We get that hard-earned money back. This is also which has been put on the agenda. So I think it's a happy situation for India because much of what they wanted on the agenda is actually going to be discussed through the day today. Cryptocurrency, economic offenders, and of course biofuel global alliance.
All right, let me also go across to my colleague Arun Thanta, who's joining us live from Akshardham Temple in central Delhi. So remember, the spouses and wives of these leaders, they have a separate agenda for themselves. So some of them will be taken to the National Gallery of Modern Art. Some of them, we're given to understand, will be taken for shopping in some of the central markets in Delhi. So walk us through, what the agenda is for the people who are not here at Bharat Mandapam, Arun, and also importantly, how is Delhi and how are Delhiites sort of dealing with this? Some people are even calling this almost like a lockdown.
Well, that's right, Zaka. People are indeed calling it lockdown, but specifically talking about New Delhi area that has been turned into fortress. And right behind me, of course, is the Akshardham Temple, and it is shut down, Zaka, for 2 days. There is no public movement in this area. We are given to understand, in fact, we've spoken to a few people here in Akshardham Temple. They are saying that the communication has come to them that foreign delegates might visit here, and therefore they have taken this measure to actually close down the temple, and they have done all the preparations which is needed for these delegates to arrive here. And in fact, UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has already desired to visit this temple, and we know that till about tomorrow afternoon, once the G20 meeting is over, then perhaps we are told that he might visit to this temple, Akshardham temple, and before this pauses, as far as the temple authorities are concerned, they don't have specific information who all are coming here, but they are saying that they are told that delegates might come here, and therefore accordingly you have to make the preparation. Security, of course, is very tight in this area, because I am standing on the flyover right in front of the Akshardham temple, and beyond this I have a way towards ITO which is blocked, and on the other side you have a way to move forward through Gita Colony. So government has ensured that people who want to go towards railway stations, they don't find any inconvenient, and people, of course, on the other side who are going towards the airport side, they also
all right, Arun, I'm going to interrupt you for just a second, because we are now seeing the first cavalcade just pull in of one of the visiting dignitaries, part of the G20. We're not sure if it's in alphabetical order or if it is the people who are farthest out. Remember, some delegations are staying even in South Delhi, so they will have to be brought in first. So as we see this top-angle shot of the cavalcade pulling in, we'll try and get a confirmation of which is the first delegation that is arriving here at the Bharat Mandapam. But the Prime Minister is there just outside the exhibition hall number 14. He will be receiving each one of them, certainly the heads of the 19 countries plus the European Union. He will be personally present there to receive each one of them, as I try and get a sense of who this person is. The first delegate to arrive, the first world leader to arrive for the G20. The heads of Germany, France, the Foreign Minister of Russia, the Premier of China, the President of the United States, all right. As we see, I think this is one of the leaders from the Southeast Asian countries who is making his way into the Bharat Mandapam venue. It is a mega event. Just the arrivals alone will go on from 9:15 to about 10 o'clock. And then post 10 a.m., they will go into the main hall, the main exhibition hall, where there will be the first session, which is One Earth. Let me also try and see if I can go across to my colleagues who are all joining me on this broadcast. Siddhant, Abhishek, Pallavi, Anand, my colleague, is also there at the upper deck. Anand, if you have a better vantage from where you are, just walk us through these pictures as we see one limousine after another pulling up in front of the entrance at the Bharat Mandapam, the main exhibition hall. All right, Siddhant and Abhishek are also joining us. So just to give you a sense of where we are bang opposite where the Bharat Mandapam is. In fact, I can see it just right behind my shoulder. You can see some of the cavalcades. The protocol vehicles are parked here, but the cavalcade itself is arriving on the other side, and that's where the Prime Minister will be receiving each one of them, at least the main heads of government and heads of state. Abhishek, is there any particular order in which these leaders are going to be coming? Sometimes it could be alphabetical, sometimes it could just be geographic. Which are the delegations that are staying farthest away, they have to be welcomed in first, and then the nearest ones come in last.
So, of course, Jagat, there has been normally this alphabetical order that has been followed, but we know that this time around, apart from the 19 leader plus EU countries, there are 9 invitees also. Then there are multiple multilateral institutions. Their heads will also be joining them for the first session, especially when all of them would like to speak on the issue of global concerns, climate change, financing, energy transition, technological, sharing. And India has been pushing for, 2-3 agendas that has been core to India's presidency. That has been one of them has been startup, other has been disaster resilience, and also women-centric development, like equitable social justice and space for women in all sort of economic and social, dimension. This is where India has been trying to push, and this is what India has, taken as a as a presidency for. Now we could see several dignitaries who are arriving in the Bharat Mandapam, where Prime Minister Modi has already arrived. He's welcoming all of these leaders, and after the first session, Prime Minister is also going to have some bilateral that is scheduled for the evening. Prime Minister is going to have a bilateral with UK President Rishi Sunak and also with Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida in the afternoon session. In the evening around 5 p.m.
All right, just give me a moment, Abhishek. You can see the Prime Minister there standing in front of what is a recreation of the Sun Temple at Konark, the giant wheel there. He's, of course, shaking hands with each of these visiting dignitaries, standing in front of the replica of the Sun Temple. And you've got the G20 logo and the slogan of One Earth, One Family, One Future